The arrival of the train screeched to a halt in the dust-choked town of Gila Bend, Arizona Territory. Smoke hissed from the engine as Eleanor Whitaker stepped down onto the wooden platform, her gloved hands clutching a single leather valise. Her crisp blue dress was already gathering dust, and the sun beat down with an unforgiving fury. She scanned the platform, searching for a face she'd never seen, but had imagined 100 times Mr. Thomas Caldwell, her betrothed, the man she'd exchanged letters with for nearly a year. In those letters, he was kind, articulate, and promised her a new beginning far from the soot-choked streets of Philadelphia. But the platform was nearly deserted. A station clerk, a few idle cowhands, and a dog with one ear missing. No sign of Thomas. "Miss Whitaker," came a voice behind her. She turned to find a rail-thin man in a deputy's badge, hat in hand, and a solemn expression etched across his sun-weathered face. "Yes," she said, suddenly wary. "I'm Deputy Harlan Ridge. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but—" He looked away, clearing his throat. "Thomas Caldwell was found dead yesterday morning, shot in the back." "I'm sorry." Eleanor's knees nearly buckled. She reached for the railing, feeling the world tilt. "No, that's not. He was just writing me 3 weeks ago. We found the last of your letters in his cabin," Ridge said gently. "Had your name and arrival date written right on the envelope." The truth landed like a blow to the chest. Her future so carefully planned had shattered before she'd even stepped off the train platform. "Do you know who did it?" she asked quietly, her voice steel beneath the sorrow. The deputy hesitated. "Not yet. Could be an outlaw, maybe a land squabble. Caldwell had a few enemies, but we don't have much to go on." "Was he robbed?" "No, ma'am. His valuables were untouched. It was personal." Eleanor looked out at the horizon. The desert felt endless now, like a prison. She had no family left, no home to return to, only a promise left unfulfilled and a grave she hadn't expected to visit. "Where is his body?" she asked. "Undertaker's got it. We'll bury him tomorrow." He paused. "You'll need a place to stay. Miss Leary runs the boarding house." Eleanor nodded faintly, feeling as though her body moved without her consent. Her heart wasn't just broken, it was disoriented. She followed Ridge through the streets of Gila Bend, past ramshackle buildings and weathered storefronts. They walked in silence until a shout broke through the heat-soaked air. "You bringing her to town now, Ridge?" The voice was sharp, sarcastic. A man leaned against the porch of the saloon, arms crossed. His hair was black as coal, falling past his shoulders, and his skin was bronzed by sun and heritage. High cheekbones, an unreadable expression. His clothes were trail-worn, boots dusty, but the pistol on his hip was polished like new. Ridge stiffened. "Not your concern, Hawk." Eleanor glanced between them. Hawk, she'd heard that name in passing from Thomas's letters. Half-Apache gunslinger. Trouble, if you believe the stories. But Hawk didn't speak again. He just looked at her, and for the briefest moment, there was something in his eyes like recognition, or warning. At the boarding house. Eleanor collapsed onto the thin bed in a plain upstairs room. She stared at the ceiling, heart racing. She had left everything behind for a man who is now dead, and she was a stranger in a town where no one knew what to do with her. But she would not leave. Thomas deserved justice, and Eleanor Whitaker, once a meek woman who only knew how to sew and take dictation, felt something rising inside her. Not just grief, something sharper. Resolve. Downstairs, the boarding house creaked, and outside, the town moved on with its day, unaware that a reckoning was coming. The Outlaw's offer the next morning. The sun spilled harsh light over Gila Bend, casting long shadows from weathered buildings and dusty streets. Eleanor sat stiffly on the creaky porch of the boarding house, clutching a cup of bitter coffee. The shock of yesterday had not yet faded, but the ache in her chest had sharpened into something fiercer, something that demanded action. A shadow fell across the porch. Eleanor looked up to see the man from the saloon, Hawk, approaching with slow, purposeful steps. His dark eyes studied her, unreadable, but there was an undeniable intensity in his gaze. "You Eleanor Whitaker?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said, voice steady despite the flutter of nerves. He nodded once. "I'm Hawk, heard about your troubles." He didn't offer condolences. There was no pity in his tone, just hard facts. "I'm sorry for your loss," he added, then paused, searching her face. "Thomas didn't deserve to die like that." Eleanor's hands clenched around her cup. "Do you know who did it?" Hawk looked away. "Not yet, but it's no accident. And it's no ordinary crime." "Then why come to me?" Eleanor's voice cracked with confusion and a hint of suspicion. Hawk took a step closer. Because you're alone here, and the law won't do much for you. Outlaws like the ones who killed your groom, ... They don't answer to the sheriff. She swallowed hard. What are you saying? I'm saying I can help. His voice was low, earnest. I know how this town works. I know the players, the crooked men, the ones who pull the strings. Eleanor hesitated. She'd been raised to trust law and order, but out here on the frontier, the rules were different. Why help me? She asked. Hawk shrugged, the hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Maybe I don't like seeing a woman with no one to watch her back. Maybe I don't like those who kill in cold blood and get away with it. Call it justice, call it revengey, don't care. But if you want answers, you'll need someone who knows the shadows. Eleanor studied him. His reputation was a mixture of myth and reality, a half-Apache outlaw, feared by some, admired by others. But beneath the rough exterior, she sensed something genuine. All right, she said slowly, if you can help me find who killed Thomas, then I'll accept. Hawk nodded. Good, but this won't be easy. You've got to be ready for whatever comes. Her heart pounded, adrenaline replacing fear. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a seeker of truth, an avenger for the man she loved. Together, they would face a town full of secrets and the darkness lurking just beneath its surface. Shadows of the past. The sun dipped low over Gila Bend, casting long, restless shadows across the cracked wooden sidewalks. Eleanor sat beside Hawk near the flickering light of a campfire just outside town. The desert night was cold, but the flames cast a warm glow on their faces. Since their uneasy alliance had begun, Eleanor's world had shifted. The gentle, sheltered woman from Philadelphia was learning to see the harshness beneath the frontier's surface where trust was scarce, and danger hid in every whisper. Hawk poked at the fire, his gaze distant. Thomas kept secrets. Not everything he wrote you was the truth. Eleanor frowned. What do you mean? There's more to his death than a random act. He was tangled up with men who don't take kindly to outsiders poking around. I've seen some of them. Powerful, dangerous. Did he tell you? She asked. No, but I've got my ways. Hawk's voice grew quieter, edged with something like regret. This town has a history. Apache lands taken, blood spilled. The old grudges don't die easy. Eleanor felt the weight of his words settle over her. She had come looking for a fresh start, but found instead a legacy of pain and violence. Why are you involved in all this? She asked softly. Hawk looked up, eyes sharp in the firelight. Because I'm part of that history. Half-Apache like me. We don't fit in either world. The law calls me an outlaw. The tribes don't fully accept me, but I fight for what's right. She studied him, surprised by the depth beneath his rough exterior. I never imagined. You most don't. He cracked a rare smile. Guess I'm full of surprises. Eleanor's mind raced. How much did she really know about the man standing beside her? And how far was she willing to go to seek justice for Thomas? Tomorrow, we start asking questions. People around here don't like outsiders sniffing around. You'll need to be careful. She nodded, feeling the fire of determination burn brighter inside her. Together, in the shadows of the past and the uncertain night ahead, Eleanor and Hawk, prepared to face the dangerous truths that awaited them where every answer could come at a deadly price. Uncovering the truth, the morning sun burned fiercely as Eleanor and Hawk made their way through the dusty streets of Gila Bend. Their first stop was the general store. A small wooden building with peeling paint and a bell that jingled faintly. When the door opened, inside, the clerk, a grizzled man named Jim, looked up from behind the counter with wary eyes. What can I do for ya? He asked, voice rough from years of dust and dry air. Hawk stepped forward, his gaze steady. We're asking about Thomas Caldwell. Heard he was mixed up with some trouble. Jim's face tightened. Ain't nothing to do with us. Thomas was quiet enough, kept to himself mostly. Eleanor's voice was firm. Did he have enemies? Jim glanced around, lowering his voice. There's been talk. Some folks say he was after a piece of land, claimed it was his, but some powerful men wanted it too. Who? Hawk asked. Names Clayton and Morgan, brothers, own most of the cattle ranches out this way. Don't take kindly to folks trying to muscle in. Eleanor felt a chill. Land disputes were deadly serious on the frontier. If Thomas had crossed the wrong men, it could explain a lot. Outside the store, Hawk pulled Eleanor aside. We need to meet these brothers. Carefully, they're dangerous. As they walked back to town, Eleanor's mind raced. Thomas had been brave to stand up for what he believed in, maybe too brave. That night, under the cover of darkness, Hawk led Eleanor to a secluded spot overlooking the Caldwell Ranch. The house was quiet, the windows dark. "I'll keep watch," Hawk said, handing her a small revolver. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be hard." But Eleanor couldn't sleep. The weight of Thomas's death pressed down on her, and with Hawk's help, she was beginning to understand the storm she'd stepped into. Danger lurks. The dawn was pale and cold as Eleanor and Hawk approached the sprawling ranch owned by the Clayton brothers. The land stretched wide, dotted with cattle grazing lazily, but the tension in the air was palpable. They approached cautiously, watching for signs of hostility. A pair of men stood by the barn, rifles slung over their shoulders, their eyes sharp and unwelcoming. Hawk stepped forward with quiet confidence. "We're here to talk about Thomas Caldwell." The men exchanged glances, then one called out, "Ain't nothing for you here, best turn back." But Eleanor squared her shoulders. "Thomas was my fiancé. He didn't deserve to be killed." The second man sneered. "You don't belong here. This land's ours, and we don't take kindly to trespassers." Hawk's hand hovered near his holster. "We're not here to start a fight. Just want answers." Tension thickened, the silence stretching taut until suddenly a gunshot rang out from the nearby ridge. Both sides dove for cover. In the chaos, Eleanor caught sight of a shadowy figure disappearing into the brush. The attackers weren't who. They seemed someone else was pulling the strings. Hawk helped Eleanor to her feet. "This is bigger than a land dispute. We've stirred up more than we thought." Eleanor's resolve hardened. Thomas's killer was out there, hidden among the whispers and shadows. "We have to find that figure," she said, voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. Together, they vanished into the scrubland, chasing a ghost that might hold the key to justice. The hidden enemy. The desert was silent except for the crunch of dry brush beneath their boots as Eleanor and Hawk pursued the shadowy figure. The fading light made it harder to track, but Hawk's instincts never wavered. "Slow down, Hawk," whispered. "We don't know who we're chasing. Could be a trap." Eleanor nodded but pressed on. Her determination burned hotter than the desert sun. Suddenly, the figure darted behind a large boulder. Hawk raised his pistol, aiming carefully. "Stop," he called. The figure froze, then slowly stepped into the light. A wiry man with cold eyes and a scar running down his cheek. "Who are you?" Hawk demanded. The man smirked. "Names don't matter. But I know why you're here." Eleanor's breath caught. "Tell us, who killed Thomas Caldwell?" The man's eyes flicked to Hawk, then back to Eleanor. "Thomas was in over his head. He found something the Clayton brothers don't want you to see." "What?" Eleanor pressed. "Proof that the Claytons have been stealing land from the locals, using threats and violence to cover it up. Thomas was planning to expose them." Hawk's jaw tightened. "So they killed him to keep him quiet." The man shrugged. "That's right, and now you're poking the hornet's nest. Be careful, lady." With that, he vanished into the twilight, leaving Eleanor and Hawk with more questions and a dangerous truth. Eleanor's resolve solidified. Thomas's death would not be in vain. Together with Hawk, she would bring justice to the land and to the man she loved. The dawn was barely breaking as Eleanor and Hawk crept toward the Clayton brothers' ranch once more. This time, they were prepared not just with weapons, but with the truth that could shatter the brothers' grip on the town. Eleanor clutched the stolen documents Thomas had hidden away, the proof of the Claytons' corruption and land theft. Hawk's hand rested on his revolver, eyes sharp and steady. They slipped past the sleeping ranch hands and confronted the Claytons in the main house. The brothers, surprised and enraged, reached for their guns, but Hawk's quick draw was faster. "Enough." Hawk's voice thundered through the room. "We've got your secrets, and the law will hear about every one of them." Clayton sneered. "You think you can take us down?" Eleanor stepped forward, holding the papers with steady hands. "We already have. Thomas died because he believed in justice. We're here to see that his sacrifice wasn't in vain." With Hawk's fierce determination and Eleanor's courage, the brothers had no choice but to surrender. The townsfolk, long cowed by the Claytons' power, watched as the outlaws were led away in handcuffs. As the sun climbed higher, Eleanor stood beside Hawk, outside the jailhouse. The town was quiet, but change was in the air. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Hawk smiled, the weight of his past momentarily lifted. "Justice is worth fighting for. And you've got more strength than you know." Eleanor looked out at the horizon, her future uncertain, but her heart no longer afraid. For Thomas, for herself, and for a new beginning in a wild land that finally felt like home.